Welcome to Mrs. Peach Thrifty Living. I'm so happy you're here today, and I am at Carl's Jr. right now. I'm getting a new radio CD player in my car. My one I had in there has been off and on for quite a while, and I am ready for something that works. Glad you're here. I hope you'll like and subscribe. Comment if you think of something you'd like to say to me. I love to hear from all of you. I love to hear where you're from also. Without further ado, I'm going to go into my story. Back and watch the others if you haven't. I told you we were going to be moving to North Dakota. My husband was appointed as state youth director of that state. That meant some traveling involved too. So we was able to go some, but not so much. I keep looking down at my little notes here. Or we didn't take a lot of furniture with us wherever we moved because we had just that little trailer. The big thing that I know we always took was my cedar chest. And I had that for absolute years. This time we rented a house, and it was a big house. It had upstairs, and it was furnished. So we had everything we needed there. And our son ended up starting to school there, and I had asked him, I said, do you remember much about what happened when we were there? And he said, really, he didn't remember a lot, but he did remember one thing. I sent him to school with a thermos, and it was snowing, and it had a glass inside, and he dropped it, and it broke the glass, and so he didn't have lunch that day. Hopefully I've made up for that scent. We moved from a house, we always left it clean, so that was always a good thing. And I always laughed and said, in my life I never did do much spring cleaning, because every time you move from a house, of course you clean everything, you get rid of what you didn't think that you thought you was going to use and didn't use. And so that was my form of spring cleaning for many years, moving around. And so I was pretty good at that, keeping a lot of things, a lot of junk out of my life that way. The town that we moved to had a Bible college that was part of the same denomination. So we ended up going to the church there on campus. And we always, like I said before, we always made friends wherever we went. And usually our friends was at the church, people from the church. And that kind of always helped us to have friends wherever we went. And of course, when you have to be a friend to have friends. And so we was always pretty sociable and had people over or whatever. I don't remember so much having people over as being invited. Family I remember visiting with was Benny Triplett and his family. He was a songwriter. Songs from the 60s and 70s, I guess, would be the time frame. How About Your Heart? My daughter remembers this, and she said this was probably one of her first memories she ever had. We were in their home, and they had the TV on, and it was Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. And she remembers that as being, that was one of the great memories she had. As I said before, some of the trips we were able to get to go on. My husband was going to be holding a revival, either 1 or 2 weeks on an Indian reservation. And I got everything ready. I was packing, trying to remember everything that we would need for the whole week or two. And we got it all ready, and we were going on the way, and I'm thinking, I forgot something. What in the world did I forget? Well, I did forget something. Once I got there, I remembered. I didn't bring my daughter any clothes. She had the clothes she was wearing. Well, you got to remember, this was an Indian reservation. There was no Walmart. It was not very popular in those days. In fact, I don't remember exactly when it started, but it was not up there for sure. I couldn't just run to the store and pick her up an outfit or two and whatever, got the things she needed. Well, we had the nights covered because she could sleep in Daddy's t-shirt, so that was okay. And I could wash, a few little things, but I found a dress at Woolworth. And remember, this was a reservation. They didn't have a big choice of what to get. So I bought her a dress. I think it was just one, could have been more, and so, she would alternate wearing what she had come in and what she wore to church, the dress. We was traveling. We came home very, very late at night, and you remember, this is North Dakota. Lots of snow. That's what I really remember about North Dakota. There was so much snow, and the weather was bad at times. Lots of, icy roads and freezing temperatures. We couldn't get the car home that night. We was all cold. We was making it. We had our jackets and our coats and whatever else on. When we stopped to get gas, we come to find out it was, I don't remember how far below zero, but it was way below zero. And here we did make it home safe and sound. I don't remember any big happening bad as far as traveling on the roads there. Time being there, we moved to our second house in the Minot area. And as I recall, the other house was furnished and this one was not. So it came with a stove, but the whole house was carpeted. The kitchen, the living room, bathroom, everything was carpeted. Not a mattress, and that's what we slept on the floor. Little boxes as the side tables, and I don't remember what we did for a couch. At first, we probably didn't do anything. We did not have a refrigerator. This was only for a short period of time, but it goes to show you can do a lot of things if you have to. I lived for several months without a refrigerator. This was winter, so you got to remember that. And it did have a garage, so we would put an ice chest out in our garage and kept our food cold there. So that worked for a while. Going outside to get the mail was an event. You didn't just put a jacket on and run out the door. It was maybe a few yards, coat on, your snow boots, whatever, to get out and go out to the snow, and then of course the wind blowing. After being there for some time, well, we heard they needed to have a church in Jamestown. So we moved there. And another house, hubby planted a big garden. He really did have a good green thumb, and so we had a nice garden. We invited people to come, and I think I have one little picture I'm going to enclose. Remember, this is just a handful, and so we started the church in our home, and of course, like I said before, we had the music. Hubby had the preaching, so we was covered that way. So we enjoyed it, got to know people, and our church grew a little bit, and we eventually was able to rent a building. I think it was rent a church building, and it grew, not tremendously, but it did grow enough that it was a nice little church. During that time, my husband's dad passed away, and he had two brothers. My brother-in-law came to live with us. He was 15, and so there we were now, a family of 5, and he was good. They had trained him really good as far as taking care of him, doing his chores. Boy, could he wash the dishes good. And he taught my son how to dry them, and he learned the ropes right along with his let's see, that would be his uncle. Give him 1,000 apologies because I was so immature. Having a teenager come in, and it was a hard time for him, I'm sure. I'm so sorry, Kenny. If you ever hear one of these, hard time for Kenny, you know, having lost his parents and his mom several years before, and then now his dad. So he did come to live with us, and we did okay. I have to say that. And during the time that that my husband had traveled during the Minot time, we discovered credit cards at that time, I guess. And we started, and the offerings at the churches were not big enough, and we didn't have a lot of money. I think there was a salary involved, but it wasn't big time money. And we started to use the credit card, which is not a good idea. And we would pay our balance, I guess. Not the balance, you know, the minimum payment. And that's not good enough. I hope if any of you do that, you will increase your payments. So that's not what this one is about, but I've learned that lesson really good. After some time, we'd settled in the town and did pretty good at the church, and the garden was doing good. Hubby had some side jobs. He was good carpentry and all kinds of things. He was a handyman. We decided to move back to California, back to where we came from. We moved in, I think, briefly with my parents, but not for very long. And then there was a little house down the street. And when I say little, it was little. It was 1 bedroom, had the little living room and then the bedroom and 1 little teeny bath, the kitchen, and right off the kitchen was a little washroom, just big enough to put a cot in there for Kenny. And that was his little bedroom. My children slept in the living room, and we had the bedroom. I remember at that time, I did, we did some creative things there because everything was, like I said, we've always painted and taken care of things. So things looked okay, wasn't big enough. I didn't like the floor, and I remember getting some little carpet squares, and I glued them to cardboard down on the in squares and put them in bedroom for carpet, and it worked. So you can do with a lot of things if you need to. I think we bought one of those little rugs that like wall to wall almost for the living room. I settled there. It was around the corner from my parents, and my daughter, I cannot believe I did this, let my daughter walk to school. She was in kindergarten, and when I say walk to school, walk to the bus to go to school. And now I wouldn't even consider it, but at that time, 50 plus years ago, it was a little safer, although I don't think it was that much safer. I want to go back just a bit, moving back here. I never did drive a lot. I didn't like to drive. I was a nervous driver. But when we got ready to move back to California, we had the truck and we had the car. And so I had to drive that car all the way from North Dakota, following my husband, to California. That was an interesting trip. We made it fine without any problems, but boy, that's not for me. I hope you enjoyed this, and know that the next part of my number 10 will be about being here for a while, and we're not done moving yet. We had a lot of moving in our lives, and it was good to be back near my parents and my brother and his wife and all the family around here. So that was a wonderful thing. And so I hope you stay tuned. Like and subscribe, come back again, and I pray God blesses you special today.